We saved the best for last here at the Supernatural Convention. I'd like to bring out someone who hasn't quite been heard from yet. Huh? Yeah. That's right. You know him. You love him. He's Mr. Sexy, Mr. Funny, and at the same time, Mr. Grouchy. Mr. Richard Speight Jr. He's Mr. Speight. It's your panel, so don't be late. Hey, hey, hey. God bless you, please, Mr. Speight. If you talk too much, it will be 8 p.m. Hey, hey, hey.
Walk me. So this is the first time that song has been played for my entrance.
Oh, really? Because we've been rehearsing this for weeks.
Right, I know. So it's been workshopped. So
here's to you, Mr. Speight.
It's your panel.
It's your panel, so don't be late.
Don't be late, right?
God bless you, please, Mr. Speight. If you talk too much, it will be 8.
I think that if you talk too much, there will be hate.
No,
and
dude.
I was like, wow, they're going to rise up and destroy.
Either way.
What? Could be. I mean, if I get people here to 8, there might be some perturbed.
That's been happening to me all day. Earlier, I signed an autograph, and I said, "You rock," and the person that I signed it for said, "Does that say you suck?" I'm like, no. Why would I? Who's it to? You suck.
The best part of you, like it does. Yeah. Not happy with what you've done this weekend.
So no, not hate. Not hate. I'm just saying, if you're too long-winded, it could be 8 o'clock before you know it.
Yeah. We had a couple of other options that rhymed with 8 that you can workshop later.
Yeah, because they're extremely dirty.
You got a dirty mind, brother.
You got a dirty mind. Guys, I hope he keeps it clean. I know he won't. Richard Speight.
Rob Benedict, Mike Bora, Billy Moran, Stephen Norton. Stephen Piano Norton. Hi, everybody. I know you haven't seen me or heard from me all weekend, so you're welcome. Some more quality me time. But you know what? Here I am doing my own thing, answering my own questions. So it is different in a way. And I say we dive right in. What do you say? You.
Hi, my name's Tina.
Hi, Tina.
I would really like to know what the green room is like. Are you guys sleeping back there?
The green room is such, I know that, I think I took a picture of the green room and sent it out earlier today. I always feel like there's a mystique around the green room that it must be fun and chaos and hijinks.
Mm-hmm.
And it is none of the above. It is boring and nobody's doing anything but chatting like sophisticates, talking about news of the day and their families. In this instance, we have some families with us, so we have a lot of kids running around back there, which actually makes it awesome. In fact, did you guys see the kids running around on the Saturday Night Special last night? How great was that? One of them was mine. The boy was my youngest. The 2 girls were Moran's, and the boy was my youngest boy, Frank, and he was running around, and he had headphones on, and he came backstage. I didn't know he was running around because I'm kind of stage managing and checking on stuff, and came back, and Michelle, Billy's wife, was like, the kids ran around through the whole thing. It was so great. I took a video, and it was so fun. They followed Billy and followed Mike, and they just got really into it. And she goes, and the whole time, Frank was eating an Oreo. And he's like, yep. Like that was his sense of accomplishment. Did it all while eating an Oreo. 2 things you don't want me to do. Run through crowds and eat Oreos. And I did it. They had a blast. They stayed up for the whole concert, those kids. It was unbelievable. So the green rooms are actually when there's families involved, it's actually very fun because you get to meet everybody's family. For the most part, literally, it's super boring. People reading scripts, Matt memorizing soap opera lines, people reading books, and mild chit-chat. It's none of what you think, what you hope. You hope it's just going to be piles of drugs and just, you hope it's going to be like the Rolling Stones' Private Plane in 1976, you know? Right. It is not, sadly. But I guess it's probably better because that way we'll all survive the journey. You imagined it would be boring, though. I could tell. You were leaning into the it's probably pretty lame kind of way.
I was more thinking that you guys like drink a lot and then sober up enough to get on stage and then go back to.
And I also think there's a lot of like the thought is that there's a lot of alcohol consumption. And I will say that if you've been doing conventions for a long time, you know that to be true. It started on you. I'm talking to you too. Back in the day when we didn't realize we'd be doing this for the rest of our lives, we all were like, yeah, we're out of town. Woo! We'd be drinking at autograph sessions. We'd be Misha, woo! And then we realized we're all going to die if we try to maintain that. I literally realized, this is why bands break up. You can't really sustain that. So we're all pretty reserved about it at this point, so we don't, A, kill ourselves, and B, we arrive home still functioning so our spouses don't forbid us from ever coming again. So no, it's not quite the party it used to be. There are those towns, Rome. 2 people love Rome. That's it. Vegas, where things it's a little more social, but for the most part, it's pretty lame. But it's happily lame because that way we can keep doing it town to town. Yeah, cheering for stuff. Thank you for your question.
Thank you.
Yo.
Hi.
Hey.
Sorry. I was wondering, well, first off, since it is the last season coming up, is Gabriel going to make a reappearance again? And if so, are we going to stop with this crap of having you come back for one episode and then dying all over again?
If I had the decision-making power in that department, I never would have left. That is an Andrew Dabb decision, the showrunner. So I don't know. It would be awesome. But it's hard for me to complain because I didn't think Gabriel would come back at all after his season 9 sort of appearance. I kind of felt like we had seen the end of Gabriel. So the fact that season 13 brought us Gabriel in such large measure with like a bunch of episodes telling the backstory and, kind of giving the origin story, that was awesome. So it's hard for me to look back at that and go, oh, I got shortchanged. Because, even though it stank to get killed again, at least I got back so I could get killed again, That's the positive. I did more episodes in season 13 than I had done in all previous 12 seasons. So it was a significant increase in Gabriel storytelling, which was pretty great. And then we got the Loki element, and again, I'd be hard pressed. I'd be looking for the cloud instead of the silver lining if I complained about that. But regardless, it would be cool. I have no idea what they have planned for season 15. I'm sure it'll be phenomenal, and it would be awesome if that character were involved. We'll all have to wait and see. Fingers crossed. Thank you. You.
Hi, my question is that at this point, Gabriel's died 3 times, and every time he dies, he kind of just gets stabbed, which is really lame considering he's an archangel, and he's strong, and he's cool and powerful.
I hear you.
Meanwhile, all the other archangels have either exploded, gotten eaten, got sent to the cage. So how do you feel about that? Like, how would you have liked to see Gabriel die in, like, the best way?
I'd love to see him not. I get the whole dying with Lucifer stabbing me trying to create an illusion to fool him, and it failing, and he killed me. I get that. I was a little perturbed that Gabriel tried the exact same crap with Michael and got stabbed again. And it was almost like a sitcom. He's like, no, this time I mean it. I got it. Go out with the same blade. I mean, just got your hat handed to you. I know he died trying to help the boys. I don't have a dream death, per se. It would have been cool had it been a little more valiant the last time around. I mean, I know his heart was in the right place. He had valiant thoughts as he went off to attack Michael, but I mean, it was a pretty crappy display of swordsmanship. Especially after in episode 1320, he fought all these dudes, fought Fenrir's sword fighting. He did all this intricate stuff, and then just sort of the last one, aha, and that was it for that. So it would have been cool if it had been a little more valiant, a little more, fancy in his display. Oh well, what are you gonna do? Rob willing.
I think they will, just because we all like to think that Gabriel isn't that stupid to try to fight Michael like that.
Yeah. I like to think that. I hope you're right. I guess we'll find out, won't we?
Thank
Again,
you.
fingers crossed. Thank you. You.
What was in your perspective, the most difficult, like, episode?
Can we narrow that down just a skosh? You mean that I'm involved in?
I mean, like, what was the most difficult episode that you think that was made?
Of the show? Mm-hmm. Kid, I haven't seen all the episodes of this show. I would have no idea. Mm-hmm. What do you think was the most difficult episode of the show?
Changing channels was, like, sure, really.
Yeah, that seemed, you know, I was there for that one. It seemed challenging. I think, if I had to guess, without having seen all the episodes, everybody may have different theories here. I think French Mistake had to be really tough. Because of the leaping back and forth between the two worlds and the way Jensen and Jared had to switch on and off for, you know, who they were and how they're perceiving it and playing, and, you know, which version they're playing, and Misha playing which version he's playing. I think that had to be challenging. But you know what? I do have an answer to your question. And again, depends on how many episodes you've seen, which I have not seen them all. But I think the 200th episode, the musical, that was a complicated episode. That was a great episode. Phil Segrisha directed that. And I watched that, and I just was thinking from Phil's perspective at the time. I thought to myself, holy mackerel. Because you have scenes where they're the fight. There's sort of a legend, it's sort of a rule of thumb when you're shooting a fight scene. Don't tie all the parts of the fight together. So if you're shooting Jared and a demon fighting, don't have Jensen fighting in the background, because then you have to cut into the specific place that they are in the fight when you see the Jared part of the fight. So you have to tie them together. It makes editing very difficult. It makes shooting very difficult, because you got to have both guys synced up at the same spot, the same place every time. It makes it very technically challenging. So you do your best not to do that unless it's for a very specific reason. And yet, in the 200th episode, you had Phil shooting fights while the girls were singing on stage in the background, which means that the song had to be synced up correctly. It means that the choreography of the girls had to be synced up correctly. Everything had to be synced up so that when you're seeing a fight or you're seeing something on the side of the stage, it's also happening simultaneously on the stage. It was incredibly challenging, and you had playback for the singing of the song and all those things. I got to go with 200. I think the 200th episode is the most difficult. Thank you for your question.
Hi.
Hey.
So my question is, if Gabriel were to come back, how do you think he would, and what would be the first thing he would do?
No idea and no idea. Because I don't know what the plot's going to be. I don't know where this is season 15. So I can't really answer what I think he would do. I think if he comes back, it's got to be, I mean, I hear fans have theories about various things, and fans are usually very much in the know and have put a lot of thought into it. That, there's an alternate universe. Is there an alternate universe version of him that's there? And what is that Gabriel like? Is that even a thing? And then the other thought is, was it a gag? Like, if the first one was a gag, was this one a gag? Is there a reason why he did it? Did he set this up for a reason? Is there some grander plan that we don't know about yet? You know what I mean? Yeah. In the way they sort of revealed that about his original Lucifer stabbing. So I don't know, honestly. How I wish he'd come back. I don't really have an answer for that. I thought that what they did with explaining the story of where Gabriel had been previously was really clever and well done and honest to the story. So whatever they do come up with, I hope it's something that is as credible and as creative as that was. And I have no doubt that if they come up with that idea, it will be, because those writers never seem to fail to be clever and creative when it comes to these kind of things. So I'm sure if they come up with something, it'll be awesome, and fingers crossed they do. Thank you.
I hope he comes back.
I hope so too. Be a real bummer if somebody got up there and like, no, I'm glad he's dead. I'm good. You.
Hi, because you played Skip on Band of Brothers, pretty much every paratrooper in the United States Army loves you. Have you ever, or would you consider doing a USO tour?
We did when Band of Brothers first came out. a bunch of us did something with Armed Forces Entertainment. And we traveled, it was Michael Cudlitz, Ron Livingston, myself, Ian Bailey. I'm trying to think of who else was there. Those names come to mind. And we went to Oman, forward operating bases in Oman, and Egypt, and military hospitals in Germany. You know, the Sinai Peninsula. Really interesting stuff, meeting some fascinating people. I have just unwavering and unending respect for people who wear the uniform for our country. It takes a special person to sign up for that job. They're underpaid and underappreciated and take 100% of the bullets that preserve our freedoms and our rights and liberties. So I have a ton of respect for anybody who has the willingness to do that. And might I add, as we forge forward as a country and try to figure out ourselves and have productive political discussions in the coming years, I'm not going to get political on you, but I will say this. There isn't anybody who's fit to tell another American that they can't wear the uniform of this nation if they want to serve in the armed forces. Nobody. If you have the brains and the stamina and the drive and the patriotism and the balls to carry a weapon in pursuit of the freedoms of our nation, then what you do in your private time is nobody's business. And anybody who says it is their business, they have a problem, not you. So I don't care what party you are affiliated with. I'm very pro-politics. I'm very pro-vote. I'm very pro-political activism. And I love the fact that we have a two-party system, because if you have everybody on one side of the teeter-totter, there's no fun in the playground. You have to have two parties to battle it out, come up with compromise, and find solutions to problems that people can agree on. But when it comes to judging people who are created, they were created by our Maker, you are messing with God's will, and that's a mistake, my friend, because no man is fit to do that. You start questioning people who want to serve in the military because of what they do in their private life, and that is not partisan. That's unpatriotic, and it's disingenuous to humanity. So I feel very strongly that as a nation we have to represent that correctly. And that said, I would do a USO tour in a heartbeat. I always thought it'd be fun to get these guys out. A pro-military show in terms of the individuals involved in this show. Jared Jensen, myself, Misha, Rob, like everybody is, inspired and just moved by the commitment and sacrifices of the troops. So I would do it in a minute, and I would love to get these guys out on it and do it. The show is folded up its tent. We take these boys on the road and go see some forward operating bases and shake hands with the people doing the hard work. Thank you, by the way. If you served, you're in your paratroop?
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much. It literally means a ton. You know, if I were running for office, I would be increasing the pay of the troops and teachers, because they are getting overlooked every time anything happens. If we don't have smart kids and a strong military, we got no country. So thank you for doing what you're doing. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. You.
Hi, so my question's a little complicated, but there's a folktale that says that the groove above the upper lip is where Gabriel places his fingers and shushes newborns, and there are some that say that it's Gabriel who gives babies their souls. So do you think that applies to, like, Gabriel?
I don't think a lot of people want Supernatural's Gabriel near their children. So no. That wasn't that hard a question. No, I don't think. I think, anybody who watches porn as much as he does, he should probably just hang with adults. But thank you for your question.
Thanks.
You.
Hi, so I know for Band of Brothers you guys had to do a few weeks of boot camp, and the interesting thing to me was you guys couldn't refer to yourselves as Rich or Damien. You had to be known as Skip that whole time. What was all that like?
It was awesome. I mean, we didn't know who each other were to start with, so it wasn't really hard to learn their character names, right? I only knew him as Winters. I only knew Bull as Bull. I only knew Luz as Luz. I didn't know who they were in real life. So that's how we met each other. And it made it really, really efficient in terms of doing the show, because you always knew everybody's rank. It was never pretend. Of course it was pretend because we're making a movie, but it was never pretend in how we learned it. So in boot camp, you knew who your squad leader was, you knew who your platoon leader was, you knew if somebody walked in and said something, you knew their ranking, so you knew you had to do it, or you knew it was one of your peers and you didn't have to do it. It was an interesting way of educating us in the ways of the military so that we would be able to get it right when we were shooting the series. Get to know your weapon, get to know your leadership, get to know your cadre, all that kind of stuff was key. You know, Captain Dale Dye ran our boot camp and ran our training. And Captain Dale Dye is the military mind who trained all the troops for Platoon, Saving Private Ryan, Born on the 4th of July. Has had a massive impact on how Hollywood tells military stories, because he was one of the early military personnel who came in and said, let me train your actors. Let me help them understand what they're trying to do so they're not totally faking it. So this doesn't look like a John Wayne movie. It looks like an actual war movie with real soldiers. And so it was invaluable. It was invaluable because we were out getting to know each other in that regard. So you didn't have to, you know, the improv moments or the loose moments were all done correctly. You knew how to speak to a higher up. You knew how to speak to your buddies. You never actually said the wrong name. You know, there were things that changed along the way. People's rank increased as the series went on, and you know, there were certainly things that happened. But I remember, like, you know, there was Band of Brothers is one of the only series where actors would call up directors and take themselves out of a scene, because, like, Donnie Wahlberg's a good example. Donnie was talking to Lipton all the time, who he played, about what Lipton did, and there was a scene. I think Dexter Fletcher was in it too, playing Johnny Martin. He would talk to his veteran and say, hey, what about this night march, blah, blah, blah. And Lipton's like, I wasn't on that night march. I didn't go on that. So Downey would call the director and go, I didn't go on that night march. Can't be in that scene. And directors were told to listen to the actors, because Spielberg and Hanks, who ran the thing, told the directors, look, these guys are going to be with these characters the whole 9 months. You're coming in to do one episode. In the same way, I walk in a room and I go, so Jensen, you're going to walk in with your gun holstered and then you'll draw it. He would say, nope, Dean would always walk out with his weapon drawn. You go, okay, you're Dean. I'm not going to tell you how to do what you do really well. And they leaned on that same idea in Band of Brothers. But you never think of actors taking themselves off screen, because the actors want to be on screen. That's the whole reason why you got into the business. But you know, somehow Band of Brothers found a way to, the subject matter and the portrayal of real men sort of superseded the desire for screen time. So people would do things they would just redesign things to be sure it was as accurate as possible. For example, if you go back and look at episode 6, there's a scene where it's very brief. Doc Rowe was walking through the snow in Bastogne, and there's a brief little mass going on. The priest and Muck and Babe Heffron and a couple of the guys. And the priest finishes saying something, and then we stand up, and Muck, my character, says, there we go. Now if we die, at least we die in a state of grace. That scene literally came out of a conversation that I had with Babe Heffron, the real man, who told that story about that happening before the shelling started during Battle of the Bulge. And I went to the director and I said, we got to put this in there. He's like, yeah, we sure do. And then we just staged it as part of something else that's going on. So when Doc Rowe's walking by, we just added that. And Babe Heffron said, that's what Skip said. He said, that's what happened. So we just staged it and tied it into the scene and made it happen. So it was a real moment that was really coming from a veteran. When you look at Skip Muck talking about swimming the Niagara River, that story is not in the screenplay. When I'm sitting in the foxhole talking about swimming the Niagara River, that scene was never written down on paper. That was a letter that was written to me from Skip Muck's sister, telling me a story about her brother before he went to the war. She said he swam across the Niagara River to prove how fit he was. And I took that letter to David Frankel, and I said, this is phenomenal information, because it was harder to find out about the guys who passed away. You could talk to veterans who were alive. You could maybe even talk to spouses if they had passed away. But Skip never lived past the war, so he had no wife, he had no family beyond his daughter, you know, his sister saying good luck in the war, and then getting a Western Union telegram. So there was never a life to discover, because he never got the chance. So to figure out who he was difficult. This is pre-internet. I mean, the internet existed, but it wasn't handy. And so I was talking to chambers of commerce and doing the old school research. And the sister sent me a letter about this event. And I said, this is awesome. So Frankel just said, Foxhole and tell the story. So that's a true story that really happened. I just sit in the foxhole. Pancala was from the same area, so he knew it. And we said, well, this would be a great way to have Luz bond with Muck, because we really haven't seen much of that. So it'll resonate more when he's crawling to the foxhole and the foxhole blows up. But it's also true. It's an honest story. Just a couple things that are interesting about that. Number one, so I say those of you who may not know the miniseries that well, but I talk about my sister Ruth and my girlfriend Faye being mad at me for swimming the Niagara River. Ruth is actually the sister, and Faye was really the girl he was dating at the time. When the series came out, they hadn't seen Faye since Skip shipped off, but she watched the miniseries, saw that Skip saw that monologue, and reached out to the family, tracked them down, because Skip had sent her his original jump wings when he became 101st Airborne. And he found her, and Faye saw that, was so moved that she was mentioned, tracked down the family and sent them back his original jump wings, which was awesome. And there's another piece of trivia. So Skip was from Tonawanda, New York, and he swam across the Niagara River. And the river is very strong, and if you poop out on that one, you're going down the falls. So it's, you know, it's dangerous. So they decided they shouldn't send him by himself. So they had one of his buddies paddle alongside him in a boat. And that buddy's name, who paddled alongside him, in case he got too tired, was Fritz Nyland. And Fritz Nyland was a character, Fritz Nyland's life was turned into a movie as well. He's Private Ryan. The Nyland brothers were the 5 brothers who went to the war, and Fritz was the one who was extricated after 4 of his brothers died. So you have Skip Muck, who was immortalized in Band of Brothers, swimming alongside Fritz Nyland, who's immortalized in Band of Brothers, at Private Ryan, from this tiny little town in upstate New York, shipping off to this one point in, you know, 2 young boys trying to do something crazy before they go off to war and end up being immortalized, you know, so many years later. And they built a monument to those guys where that moment happened of the river. And I went and was a keynote speaker at its dedication a few years ago, many years ago now. But it was a really, I think, a rare moment that you have people from a small community both have such a massive impact, not only on their families, not only on their country, but on cinematic history. Very interesting trivia, I think. Anyway, thank you. Thank you. Clearly, I could talk about Band of Brothers for a while. It was an interesting time of my life. You.
Hi. So I read a lot of fan fiction, and I've noticed.
That's always a sketchy start to any.
Yeah. Don't.
I've noticed a lot of people ship Sam and Gabe. I personally don't see an emotional connection. What are your thoughts since you played Gabe?
I think whatever fans want to write about in their fictional stories is fine for them to write about. I have no comment on anybody's creativity. I'm not here to have an opinion that might adversely affect somebody's desire to tell a story of their own. You know, so I'm very wary. I know there's a huge community of people who are so inspired by this show and other shows that they go off and do their own creative work based on that show. I think it's fantastic. If it's a drawing, if it's a story, if it's a needlepoint, whatever it is, good for them, because creativity is freeing and liberating and healthy. And I think whatever stories they want to tell, if my characters inspire some of that, great. If they see something I don't see, great. It doesn't mean, you know, you can look at 20 people look at a painting, come away with 20 opinions. It doesn't make any of them wrong or any of them right. It is and appreciated, and it triggers an experience in each of the viewer that may be different from the other, and all those are genuine and all those are justified.
Right.
Thank you.
Thanks.
You.
Hi. So a few of you guys have directed episodes of Supernatural, and I was wondering if you were to come back, or even on a different project, who from the cast that hasn't directed would you want to be directed by?
Who hasn't directed Supernatural that I think would be a good director? Well, obviously, Jensen's going to be, he's directed a lot and is a talented guy. Misha's directed. I think Misha should direct more. I think his episode was great, and I think he's a very smart man. I think Jared Padalecki should direct. I think Jared Padalecki is obviously one of the most book smart people I've ever met. He's been on sets for basically his entire adult life, so he's learned in the field better than anybody can learn in the classroom. And I don't know if he wants to direct, but I think he would do a beautiful job because he's an emotional person who's not afraid to explore things personally as a performer, and I think it would translate well into somebody steering other people's performances and telling. So I think Jared Padalecki would be a great director. Thank you. Yo.
Hi. So this is kind of difficult to answer, I guess, but do you think a demon could perform an exorcism on itself?
I've seen people do crazy shit to themselves online. So I got to go with yes. Because there are things I don't think people should be able to do that they can do, and they can do whistling zippity-doo-dah with a smile on their face. So I'm going to say, yeah, demons could probably exercise themselves. Exercise is so important these days, especially for demons. So I'm going to go with yes. What do you think?
I'm not sure, because
Well, I don't think any of us are that sure. I don't think definitive answers are the order of the day here.
Well, because I mean, sort of like watching the show, like with Sam and his demon powers and stuff. Like part of while he's doing whatever, the demon is slowly dying, and so it's halfway through where the demon just break.
I don't know. I'll just say this. If I can direct a fight scene of me versus me, then a demon can exercise himself. It's got to be doable. Thank you.
Thank you.
You.
Hi, I'm Cheryl.
Hey, Cheryl.
I was just wondering what your favorite songwriters are.
Oh, favorite songwriters. Well, grew up a huge REM fan, so I'm obviously a massive fan of Buck, Berry, Mills, and Stipe, the four gentlemen who are attributed to writing all of their songs. I'm also a huge fan of Soul Coughing, Mike Dowdy, and the guys from that band who wrote all that music. I think that's beautiful stuff. I'm a big fan of Sufjan Stevens right now. I think that guy's genius, and he writes phenomenal music that's moving and touching, and he's high on my list of people I listen to a lot right now. He has a song. So I spend a lot of time, and you guys have probably heard me talk about, in Joseph, Oregon, which is a tiny little town. It's my wife's hometown. I go up there all the time. It's a town of 800 people, built around a glacial lake, snow-capped mountains, built around a glacial lake. Literally one of the prettiest places I've ever been in my life. I was married there. We spend as much time as we can there. It's awesome. And it's not destroyed by tourism because you can't go through it. You can only go to it. Highway 82 goes around the lake and ceases to exist. You can't go to there or somewhere else, on your way to somewhere else. You can only visit that place. And I say all that to say that Sufjan Stevens, the lake is called Wallowa Lake. And it has generated two bands, or two musical elements I think are fantastic. There's a trio of singers, of girls, called Joseph. 3 girls who sing. You guys know this trio? They are named for the city of Joseph. They're great. And they used to summer there with their grandfather. And so their work is inspired by that area. And Sufjan Stevens has a song called Wallowa Lake that he wrote about Wallowa Lake. That's one of the most haunting and beautiful songs I've ever heard. And I think it's so bizarre that it's about this tiny little place. It's like to know this place, and it's so tiny and so off the radar that I found that fascinating. It's a town of 800 people that has, from the time my wife left to now, ballooned to 827 people. Growth is not its cornerstone. So I think he's great. And I'm trying to think of who else. I also like going back and listening to old school country music. I think Hank Williams is phenomenal. You think about these people who are writing their own stuff and recording it back in the day when that was, new and unusual. Do you have any favorites?
Shania Twain.
Shania Twain, talented lady. I didn't listen to a lot of her stuff, but I know the popular stuff. Garth Brooks is a good singer-songwriter. There's just a lot of there's a lot. I'm a big music lover, so it's hard for me to nail down one group. If I had to say, I've probably been more influenced by REM and Soul Coughing than anybody else, and I'll add Sufjan Stevens as like my new singer-songwriter fave. Thank you. You.
Hello.
Hey.
My question is, what did you do to prepare for your role as Gabriel?
Ooh, not much. And I say that because I didn't know I was playing Gabriel. So in fairness to me, I thought I was playing a janitor. Nobody said this is going to go on for 13 years. Which is good, because that might have been a lot of pressure that I didn't respond well to. If I had known, I might have gotten a haircut. I don't know. I might have done something different. Listen, if somebody goes over to you real quickly and says, hey, real quickly, the next thing you do, people will be discussing for the next 15 years, and there'll be footage of it. You don't want to hear that. You want that just to happen organically. So I didn't really long game in how to prepare for that character, because I was given the information as you were as viewers in snippets. I knew the Trickster episode first, and I knew the next episode, which was still Trickster, and then, you know what I mean? So it was kind of doled out slowly. I know that when I got the episode Changing Channels, and they said, all right, and I read it, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm the Archangel Gabriel, holy cow. I was like, oh, oof, that's a lot. So I went back and read a bunch of the biblical history of Gabriel, and then I asked production if they would send me some episodes leading up to this so I could follow the mythology, and they did, because that was before it was available online. And then I had them hook me up with the writer of the episode, who was Jeremy Carver, who is now the showrunner of a great show called Doom Patrol. If you haven't seen it, it's a great show. But Jeremy Carver, he and I spoke on the phone, and I said, yeah, so I'm really excited about this. When I talk to you about anything I need to know, and I went back and looked at everything Gabriel did in the Bible, and he said famously, yeah, we don't so much go by the Bible. That's not really our template. But barring that, so research that episode in terms of trying to follow the mythology of what was going on in the story. In terms of prepping to play the actual character, the words were beautifully written. They were great scenes. I got handed some great material, and then you just work on the material as it in a vacuum. Like, well, what does this scene mean? What is he trying to say here? So it's not like I work on Gabriel per se. I'm working on these very specific moments as a performer. Like, what resonates here? What happens here? What does the character do here that matters? How's he relating to the boys? How does this relate to what he wants? And do your homework that way, like you would approaching any role. An interesting balance of dark comedy and seriousness, especially in that episode. So finding those moments to sort of ebb and flow out of that attitude was part of the discovery process.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hey.
Hi, I'm Marissa from Chicago. Question is, what was your favorite version of Loki to play?
How many versions did I play?
Well, you played Loki and then you played Gabriel. So, I guess my question is, what was your favorite version? Did you like playing, or did you like playing Gabriel more?
Yeah, because I feel like we've only seen Loki once in 1320, because every other time it was Gabriel pretending to be Loki. Right? I mean, that tracks in the story. It's like we've only seen him in episode 1320. That's the only time we actually see the actual Loki. Look, I obviously I played Loki for 2 scenes in 1 episode. So I spent a lot more time with Gabriel. I happen to really love the way what they did to create Loki. I thought that was a really well-written role. So, I mean, I feel very fortunate to have gotten to play both. I don't really have a favorite. One of the things I liked about the writing of that episode, 1320, is that they did a guy. watch that, to me, everybody has their own opinion, but, you know, Gabriel is a very flawed character and comes in that scenario having breached a deal, which is what got him in trouble to start with. And then he retaliates by killing the kids of the guy who orchestrated his capture, which is like the worst thing you can do. And so I feel like, you know, but for the fact that Jared and Jensen, that Dean and Sam step in and help Gabriel, Gabriel's going to die at the hands of Loki. And it was hard when I was, you know, working on the characters of the two guys, Gabriel and Loki, for the fight scene. You know, I kept finding myself being much more empathetic towards Loki because he had his kids killed. And that to me was just such an awful thing to do for something that Gabriel could have prevented by just sticking to the terms of the agreement they had made originally. So, you know, I think we feel for Gabriel because we like him, but he was not an honorable character in that relationship. You know, it's like honor amongst thieves, so to speak, between those two guys. I don't have a favorite. I think they both are nuanced characters that are really well crafted on the page, and it was really fun to get to play them both. And that's not a cop-out. That's literally like if you play, you know, something boring like well, I walked in and, you know, gave my spiel and left. That's a boring character. But both these characters are so multi-layered, so much going on. I mean, I loved that scene with Jensen and Loki in the room where you know, he's walking around and getting ready to, you know, then he ends up being a hologram. Like, it was just so well crafted, the story. And so I just had such fun playing both characters that it's hard for me to pick a favorite. Do you have a favorite?
Gabriel.
Gabriel, all right. That's legit. And I get that. And I feel like that's what most people would say. I think when you're playing it, and especially because I was also directing it, I spent a lot of time, more time analyzing it than one would who was just viewing it from the outside. You know what I mean? Yeah. But that's, you know, good because I spent more time playing Gabriel. So good. I'm glad you like that guy. Thank you so much.
Hi.
Hey.
So one theme from Supernatural that sticks out to me is the idea of fate and destiny juxtaposed with free will. So my question is, do you think, or could you explain how those are juxtaposed in your own life, if you think that one wins out over the other?
Destiny versus free will?
Yes.
That's a little lighthearted chat for a Sunday. Gosh, I don't know, man. I mean, you know, everybody is dealt a set of cards, and they are different person to person. And then you make choices based on the cards you're dealt. And so, I mean, I think they kind of work in equal measure. Because there is a certain a destiny to things. Not everybody has the same opportunities as other people. Not everybody has the same, you know, the backstory differs for every person. Every person's, I mean, we all have that thing in our life where like, wow, if that one thing had been different, I'd be somewhere else, worse or better, or you don't know. One of the, like, oh wow, if that one stock tip I hadn't invested in, I wouldn't have lost my retirement egg or whatever. Or if I just thought Twitter would matter, I'd be a gazillionaire. You know, so that's a very hard question to answer. And there is no right or wrong, right? It's all philosophical debate. It's all just, it's an erudite discussion amongst learned scholars who could spend their time having this discussion and still never come to a conclusion. That said, you know, I think making the right choices to the best of our ability, because we're all going to screw up, but making the right choices, the smart choices, is so key. And if you're a parent, you know what I'm talking about. You always try to arm your kids. Like, here, you are going to be faced with choices. Try to take a second. Try to think it out. Try to make the best choice you know how to make. Because things are still going to go pear-shaped. Bad things still happen to good people, and bad people still get away with a lot. Like, it just happens. But you just do your best to do your best. And at the end of the day, hopefully that generates the best life you could possibly have.
Thank you.
Thank you. Tough question to answer. Not sure there is one. You.
Hi. So I was wondering, throughout your whole entire times of playing Gabriel, what are your most favorite scenes that you did?
I love the scene with where I reveal myself to be Gabriel, which is in Changing Channels, because it's Jared, Jensen, and myself. And there's no fancy blocking, no fancy camera work. It's three guys standing there talking. But I thought, A, it was really well written, and B, coming from theater and coming from just sort of old school acting, as I did, it was old school acting 101. It was just listen, respond, and those guys are such talented guys who come prepared that if you do the same, there's a lot of levels and nuances that can be discovered as the scene is unfolding. And we had a great time doing that scene. That was the first time I really had to act with them. I mean, I'd done some acting with them. I'd done scenes, but that was the first like heavy lifting that I'd done with those guys, and it was a real treat. It was awesome, and I was happy with the way the scene came out. I was happy with the content of the scene in terms of the mythology of the show, and I enjoyed it as an actor. It was fun to do. Trying to think of what else I enjoyed. I loved everything I got to do in episode 1320. I thought I got handed a gift by getting to revisit that character and tell the origin story the way I did. So everything about that was fun for me. I loved the sword fight at the beginning. I loved the Monte Carlo stuff. I loved fighting Loki, and the Loki verse had a real blast doing that. So I would say the Gabriel reveal and then all of 1320. Do you have a favorite?
Honestly, throughout the whole entire thing was probably changing channels. So
yeah,
yeah,
that makes total sense. I get it, and that's I think that's why that episode has held up so well over time, because it has resonated so well with people. It's a well-written episode. Thank you. Appreciate it. Yo.
Hi.
Hey.
So my question is, who is your role model?
Who is my role model? Well, probably my dad. My dad, many of you may have met my dad if you've done a Nashville tour, and my dad hosts the Nashville bus tour every year with me, but really do it without me. He just loves giving a tour of Nashville. He's a well-thought-out, well-spoken gentleman. He sort of represents, I think, an era lost. He's a well-spoken guy, but he doesn't use foul language. I've never seen him crane his neck at a girl. He's just been a class act my entire life. And so I find that very impressive. It's a lost art being a gentleman. It's a lost art being, that guy. And I think he has a command of language and a way of expressing himself that is, again, sort of no longer with us. And I appreciate what he represents, not only as a man, but also a father. I'll say this about my dad, and this is what I aspire to as a father. My dad was an attorney and worked crazy hours as attorneys do. And he would rush home from wherever he was. If he was on a business trip, he would fly home early to get to my football game to watch me sit on the bench. I mean, that's the level of support I got from my dad. Is that he was just proud of me for participating and doing my best. And it didn't matter that I wasn't a star or even on the field. He wanted to be there to see me be a part of a team and do what I was proud of doing. And I thought that was, if I can get a little bit of that to my boys, then it's the greatest gift a dad can give a kid, because I could pass it on to my kids. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
If that guy's here, and that guy's here, and that guy's here, and that guy's here, that means it's the end of our time on the stage. That means we have finished doing what we do, Chicago. But it's been awesome, man. It has been, well, like the weather, filled with ups and downs and hot and cold moments. But truly, you guys have been fantastic. It's been a great weekend. So we're going to sing the song we always sing to wrap this up. And I want you guys to sing it with us. And if you don't know it, learn it and sing it with us next time. Here we go. Boys, shall we? You know the part.
It's the end of the con as we know it. It's the end of the con as we know it. It's the end of the con as we know it. So go home.
After autographs and photographs, and drive safely in the snow.
It's the end of the con as we know it. It's the end of the con as we know it. It's the end of the con as we know it. So go home.
On behalf of Mr. Billy Moran, Mr. Stephen Norton, and Mr. Michael Borja, that right there is Rob Benedict, and I am Richard Speight. Thank you, Chicago. Thank you so much, everybody. This is always a high watermark for us. We'll see you next year.
Thanks, everybody. See you next year.